Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I will be doing the Eastern Region bracket for the Summer Showdown. If you did not see yesterday I did the Western Region bracket, here's a little spoiler preview. But if you want to see the full bracket, check out yesterday's video. It'll be linked in the description as well as in the cards and at the end of this video if you want to check it out for yourself then. But today we're in the Eastern Region. 4 teams in this one, 6 matches total, so a much smaller tournament than the one we did yesterday. So today's video should not be as long as that one. In this tournament, though, 4 teams. We have the Guangzhou Charge, Shanghai Dragons, Philadelphia Fusion, and Seoul Dynasty. Very interesting tournament with some very interesting teams, very interesting grouping here in terms of our matchups. So let's go into the first one. Let's take a look at it. Let's talk about it. It is the Guangzhou Charge taking on the Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai Dragons 6-0 in the tournament qualifiers for the Summer Showdown. Guangzhou Charge, I believe, were 4-2. So decent from them, but they are a team who really, maybe they're 3-3. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it's 4-2. It's a pretty good tournament for them. Pretty good set of qualifiers for them. Jimmy Zernius coming into the lineup, having a huge impact on the Sojourn and the Lucio respectively. And then also you have the rebirth, if you will, of Krong being the only tank player on the lineup on the roster. Definitely gives him a lot more ability to kind of have the kind of single-handedly bigger impact on the tank role than what we saw when he was splitting time with Rio, and just generally we saw from Rio. So Charge much improved from their one win that they had over the first half of the season. Getting 4 wins just in the second half of the season alone. Very good showing from them. They look good. They're a good team. The Shanghai Dragons have lost 1 map this tournament qualifiers. And it wasn't to Seoul. It was to the Fusion. Shanghai have looked really, really good. I mentioned it in my last video that Who Are You is a top 3 Genji in the world right now. He arguably is the best Genji in the world right now. The Dragons look really, really, really good. Izayaki, Lee Jagon are pounding on the support line. I think Void is a very good, solid Junker Queen as well. And so Lip, on the Sojourn, just kind of has to do whatever he wants. He doesn't even have to be as much of a star, and he still looks really, really good. So I think it's a tough battle for the Charge. I think that they will keep it somewhat competitive, but right now, you got to go Dragons. They have looked so good. They've dropped 1 map this entire qualifier. It's hard to look at anybody beating the Dragons in this tournament, especially a Charge team who've struggled very, very heavily so far in this tournament. Very tough to kind of look at it going the way of the Charge. Fusion, Dynasty, they played last weekend. It was a 3-2 win for the Dynasty. But a thing of note is the way that the teams played kind of changed over time. The Dynasty played a lot of kind of Ashe early on and then started to play more Sojourn as the series progressed. And as they played Sojourn, the series kind of went much more heavily in the Dynasty's favor. So interesting matchup here, considering how the Dynasty were, hadn't dropped a map until they played the Fusion. And then they, last weekend, went 3-5 in maps, playing the Fusion and the Dragons. So it was a tough weekend for them, all things considered. But it was an especially tough weekend in terms of trying to get their seeding. But I think they looked a lot better in the Fusion, against the Fusion in the second half. I did actually manage to watch some of this series. This is one of the few games I actually did manage to watch some of. And I was very impressed by what I saw from the Dynasty in those last 2 maps in particular against the Fusion. So I think the Dynasty should take this one. I think they are the favorites in this matchup. Fusion have looked decent. They've had definitely big weekends going into qualifiers. I don't think this past weekend was necessarily a big weekend because they lost to Seoul, though they did beat Hangzhou and managed to get into the tournament, which is big, but a lot of that I think comes down to just the fact that Hunters did not look good last weekend. So the Fusion, to me, aren't even necessarily the 4th best team in this region in this tournament. And if they are, they're kind of a distant 4th because they did not look very good in most of their matches. It's just a good final weekend and looked good against Seoul. And good against the Spark. So I'm going to say it's a 3-1 win for the Dynasty. I think if they favor the Sojourn like they did in the second half of the series against the Fusion, they should be just fine. I think that that's really where Fitz excels. The Fusion have been weird with switching, between Carpe and MN3. They started with Carpe, and then went to MN3 with the Sojourn. They look better with MN3, but I still don't know why. It's complicated. Smurf looks really, really good on the Junker Queen. I still have concerns about Fury's Queen. He did not look great the first 2 weeks. So, interesting matchup here. I think it's a close one. Closer, necessarily than maybe the score will indicate, but I think the Dynasty are the better team and they should take it. 3-1 score in that one. Lower bracket, next round, Guangzhou Charge versus the Philadelphia Fusion. Tough one to really predict. Fusion are an interesting team because they really could go all the way. They have that type of potential. And they've played a lot better in tournaments than they have other ones. Their tournament performances have generally been better than their regular season performances. But even this time, I just don't feel great with the Fusion in this one. I don't think they've looked really all that impressive in this tournament. And I think with the way that Jimmy and Choi Se-won have played, Zest and MN3 are both very, very good players. I think Zest is the better Genji than Choi Se-won, but Jimmy has looked so good. When these two teams played the last time, it was a pretty good series, but I think the Charge won in a pretty convincing fashion, all things considered. I think that the way that the Fusion play just is not necessarily something that inspires confidence in me. They kept it close against the Dynasty, but the Dynasty adapted and won pretty convincingly in the second half, those last two maps. The Charge, I still feel, are good. I think they're playing pretty high level right now. And so for me, it's a really tough series to call between these two teams. But I think when push comes to shove, when it comes to experience, when it comes to kind of what they've done so far this season, I think it'll be a 5-mapper. I think it goes the distance. But I ultimately think that the Fusion should be the team that take it in this one. They just, to me, have the talent. They have the peaks that are higher than the Charge. And so to me, Fusion should take this one. 3-2 victory for them. Dragons vs. Dynasty. I thought this series would be closer than we actually got it when they actually matched up last weekend. I thought the Dynasty would win, and I thought it would be very competitive, but instead the Dragons won, and it was not particularly competitive. They kind of clowned on the Dynasty, so this is a really interesting one to see kind of the rematch. Dynasty had a bit of a rough weekend last weekend, right? Close series against the Fusion. Bad loss to the Dragons. Dragons look so good. They look like a complete unit in a way that I just don't think the Dynasty do. As much as I've loved the Dynasty this season, I've been very high on the Dynasty. I've been on the Dynasty train this season. I simply think that the Dragons are just too good. I don't think it'll be a 3-0 this time. I'll give the Dynasty 2 maps. I think it'll be a close one, but I think the Dragons are really, really good. I think they look so strong in this meta. It's made for them. It's built for their strengths, and they just look way too strong right now. So that sets up a Dynasty Fusion rematch. Dynasty are the kings of those kind of big, late, strong performances kind of in tournaments. Fusion, close series last time. Like I said, the Dynasty adapted very, very well, and I think pulled it out. And I think it'll be much of the same type of situation here. I think it's very tough to call a Fusion win against a Dynasty, and they just look so good. The Fusion have a win against the Dynasty this season, but I think that was way more favorable for what MN3 wanted to do. I think he was able to do a lot more consistently than what we've seen for a lot of the season. I think that the meta was really good for that. I don't necessarily think it's the case this time around. I think so long as the Dynasty play Sojourn consistently, I think they should win this one. So that's the finals once again between the Dragons and the Dynasty. And it's a weird one because in the last video I talked about how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in a row in a very short amount of time. And we'd have the same type of situation here as we would with the Western region. I won't say who it was just in case you don't want to be spoiled, but that would kind of be the case you would have here with the Dragons and the Dynasty. They played last weekend. They would then play again 2 times this weekend, back-to-back days, in fact. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. But the Dragons have been that team in the past. So the Dragons have that history of being that team that has won against teams multiple times. They've been so dominant in the past, 2020 and 2021 in particular. They're very, very good. And they're still a very top-level team in this season here. They just haven't gotten that big tournament win. But to me, it feels like this is their tournament. They look really good. The meta really favors them. They were dominant last time they matched up. I don't see a world right now in which the Dynasty are able to overcome some of the things that I think they just did not look as good against the Dragons on. I think Stalker's a good Genji. I don't think he has any issues on Genji. I think Koryu is just so good, and I don't think that Vindame and Prophet as the support line has been nearly as strong as what we've seen from Lee Jae-gon and Izayaki. Maybe Iris plays in this tournament, which would be weird, but I think Shanghai just looks so good. I think it'll be close again. I think it's hard to not be close, but I'm going to say a 4-2 win for the Dragons over the Dynasty in this one. I think both these teams are very, very good. Both of these teams are very solid. Both of them have had great showing so far this season, but I just think right now I have to favor the Dragons. I think they've looked better. I think they just have so much momentum going for them. I don't want anybody to say that I'm living in the past, okay? The Dragons have legitimately been an unstoppable force this tournament cycle. They've literally only lost one map so far. Good teams always find a way to win. I think they just look very, very good right now. This is not a dig on the Dynasty. I think the Dynasty have looked pretty good. I don't think this meta is the one for them. I don't think it's necessarily the one they look the best. I think the Dragons do look a lot better in this meta. I think this meta is way more up their sleeves, way more favorable for them. And so for me, I got to go Dragons, taking this one all the way. Maybe the Dynasty get the win in the upper bracket, but I think the Dragons just too hard to stop right now from what I've seen from them. They look incredible. They look dominant, and I think you have to go in their direction. So there you go. That is my Eastern region bracket. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you agree, disagree, whatever it is. Love to hear from you in the comments. That's going to be all from me for today, though. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.